Okay, so we've got another dashcam video. Still using the same dashcam as before, but got an email from NextBase and they're offering 50% off the rear camera for the 512GW at the moment. So it's a pretty tiny device. In the box we've got the camera itself, which is absolutely tiny. We have got an extremely long USB cable, obviously to go from the front of the car to the back, and we have a sheet that says we need to update the firmware on the camera, and we have a spare 3M sticky pad. So what we're going to do, I don't know how well this is going to work because I'm going to want to route the cable on that side of the car and there's lights coming in that side, but we'll do what we can. We're going to run the cable up there, same path as before, up along the top of the front dash lining, and along the A pillar, and then what we're going to do, instead of going down towards the fuse box, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up past the B pillar into the C pillar. Okay, so we're going to need to go into the C pillar, and the reason for that is that we want to get into this hose containing various wires. And if I just pull this off, you see there's various wires for the lights and things on the hatch. Now the reason we want to do that and not just run a cable along here is because when the hatch opens, this with the hatch closed it'd be a very short run. With the hatch open it extends that run quite a lot, as you can see here. It actually would stretch that cable out quite far and probably start doing damage. So if we run it through the proper channels, we can then get behind this panel here and just run the cable straight to there and put all the slack behind there, which makes it puts a lot less strain on the wire. It means we should get a much better result. Okay, so with that plan in mind, let's start unpacking this wire and see how we get on. So I'm going to just open this packet first of all. And I've got a really long wire, as you can see here, tons and tons of slack. You can see I've quite carefully labelled front camera and rear camera so we don't get confused, because the connectors are different. So this appears to be a micro USB connector and this appears to be a mini USB connector going into the camera. Actually, I'm not sure it's mini USB. I'll have to check that up later. It looks like a female mini USB, but I don't think it is. Maybe it's not USB at all. I don't know. It looks a bit like USB anyway. Right, so you can see what I'm doing, I'm probably going to need to move the camera. So let's see if we can find somewhere good for the camera, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, right, so let's first of all have a look at here. Right, so we've got a hatch on the top of the camera. Let's turn this thing off for a start. There we go. Well, the thing's fiddly. Okay, so actually the connector in there isn't quite USB. It looks a little bit like USB, but it's definitely not the same at all. But anyway, we're going to plug this in. Just so we know how much slack we're going to need. And we'll turn it off, because we don't want it doing anything while we're here. Okay, so the first thing is this cable is definitely chunkier than the other cable that comes with the dash cam, the power cable. Probably because it's got more pins. It definitely looked like it was bigger than a USB connector when I just got it there. So anyway, we've got it in the roof lining. It's not amazingly snug, but you know, it tucks in reasonably okay. And I'm going to open the door and just push it in behind the door seal. Don't know how well this is going to come out because the sun is literally just over there, so I do apologise for the terrible lighting if this comes out badly. I'm going to try and push this in. Ooh, as this is a chunkier cable, this isn't actually going in quite as neatly as I'd hoped. I'll show what I mean in a bit. Actually, it's not too bad. I just need to push that back snug after. Okay, that's fine. So I'll just keep feeding this in. I guess when I get to the B pillar, I'm going to just tuck it in a similar way to what I've done there. I just need to try not to look at the sun while I'm doing this. Okay, so tuck that into the B pillar. smell before I get too carried away. Okay. Right, let's move across. I guess I need to find somewhere else for the camera. So let's pause you for a second and we'll move the camera back. Okay, so I do apologise, I'm probably going to get in the way of the camera quite a lot for this shot, but we'll certainly try and avoid as much as possible. So again, we're just pulling away the trim ever so slightly, pulling away the seal ever so slightly, pushing this into here, bit by bit, making sure the seal fits snugly. We're not exposing much more wire than we really need to. Don't want it to look too ugly. Now, I know the recommendation is to run this through the roof lining, but having seen a video by RS Things where he installed the shark fin area, getting the roof lining down looked like a right pig. So I think we're going to give that one a miss. So what I want to do here now, let's turn the camera around a little bit. Can you see that? Yeah. So the inlet to that that hose just going into the boot is about there. So rather than tuck this in, what I'm going to do is try and pull this panel off and see what we've got. So I'm going to put the seat down, get this parcel shelf out of the way, and then see what we're looking at. Okay, so one issue I've found straight away is when I pull this off, that white panel, it actually tucks in underneath this panel. Let's see if I can get the camera right. So it actually tucks in beneath that other panel. So I don't just want to pull that out because it seems to require that other panel to come out. What I'll do is perhaps see if I can get it away just enough to feed it into the hose. It seems like I might be able to get away with that. Okay, so I don't know how well I can show this. We've got pulled this slightly forward. We're going to run basically the cable along here and then down under here. Now, I've pushed a bit of thread through there, a bit of the cable through there. And you can see it's kind of poked through sort of here. So we've got this basically, it's hard to show with one hand, but basically this cable is just looped through there at the moment. I'm going to pull this through as far as I can. And I'm going to thread it through here and then hopefully into here and up there up to the camera. So yeah, let's see how we get on. Okay, so after quite a fight, I managed to get that through the tube and up through here. Now it's really difficult because the plug on this is at a sort of 45-degree angle, so it likes to get caught all the way along. You really have to kind of feed it through notch by notch. If you're patient, you can do it. And then the other issue you've got is obviously cable tracking against rubber and the other wires inside. There's a lot of friction there, so you do need to be quite patient with it. It does take a fair amount of effort to get that through. Once you do, you end up with this situation. So I guess the next step is to feed it through there and pull off this panel and see what we can sort. Okay, so that panel there, which is that one here, took a lot more figuring out. What that required was one of these tools, just under the edge, just slightly off centre here, pop it out, and then it came down. It was a little worrying how much force actually needed to use to pop that out. I thought I was going to break it, but no, it seems to be okay. So what I'm going to do now is thread this wire up through there and hopefully get it out through here somewhere. Now the only issue I've got is this wire is so long, there's going to be so much slack rattling around, so if that's a problem, I might need to look at finding a way to handle that later on. For the time being, let's run it through and we'll see how we get on. So it's also handy to pull that side panel off there because then you can easily get to this hole here, which is actually covered by it. That one was a lot easier to unplug, it didn't really require anywhere near as much force. So yeah, let's feed it through and see how we get on. Okay, so what I've ended up doing is I ended up putting a loose cabling, folding it back on itself a couple of times, putting a bit of Scotch magic tape around here and here. I use that rather than sellotape just because it's a little bit more plasticky. If you ever need to get it off, it's not going to make quite so much a mess, and it's not going to leave the sticky residue you get from electrical tape. I folded it just long enough so I can tuck one end in here and the other end in here and kind of fold it back on itself a couple of times, poking a bit out there. So what we're going to do is go clip the trim back. Well, actually, before I clip the trim back, let's turn it on and make sure it's all working, and provided it is, then we'll clip the trim back into place. Okay, so that seems to be working. We're getting a feed of the front and the back. Right, so let's close the boot up and put the panel back on. Okay, right, so finished product, we've got that going into there. That then now travels through there, down there, back up to here, and out there. So that then comes along here, up, under, so you can't really see because of the light contrast unfortunately, but then comes out there, comes out there, comes out there, and into the front camera. Okay, so yeah, that is the dash cam. We'll have a look at some footage now, and I'll run some footage for a couple of minutes, just going over the North Yorkshire moors and just seeing how, you know, the front and back camera appear. I'm not going to crop anything out. I'm going to show you the exact feeds. Obviously, YouTube may add its own compression to this, so it might look a little bit more pixelated on YouTube than it is in reality. But all in all, I think it works pretty well. Okay, so as you probably noticed from those clips, they were in places quite washed out, and the reason that happened was because when I messed around with the cameras, I'd basically tilted them up towards the sky a little bit. So the way that they balance the light is they try and look at how bright the majority of the picture frame is, right? So if you've only got road in the bottom third and the top 2/3 are like your sky, then it's going to take the brightness of the sky and make the road kind of quite hard to see. So what you really want to do is you want to tilt them down a little bit, so you've got, you know, mostly road, a little over halfway road, and then just a little under halfway sky, and that just helps balance it a bit better. So here's a couple of clips after I've adjusted the cameras. You can see a little bit more of the dash trim and the bottom of the boot liner and where the wiper is, but you get a much better contrast ratio. So here's a few more clips with those adjustments in place, just so you can see what a difference that actually does make. So yeah, I'm quite happy with how that's turned out. There's no rattles. I've just gone for a bit of a drive and there's been no rattles whatsoever. Even despite the lazy cable management in the back, it seems to be enough to stop it rattling, so I think that's worked out pretty well. Yeah, so I think that's actually been quite a successful project. It took me a little longer than expected because I did get stuck in that back corner and I did have the cable just kind of running down straight into the boot and back up for a little while, which was a bit horrible, but it worked as a stopgap. But where I really struggled was that back panel. I couldn't figure out quite what I was supposed to do. So I'd like to thank Rob Shaw from the RS Stinks channel, who sent me the instructions he received with his shark fin antenna, which showed a lot of the panels you needed to remove to get into that area of the car. I didn't need to really dismantle that much. Just knowing how it went together was a great help in terms of making sure I didn't break anything, which was my main, just having that peace of mind of when you're not sure how much force to put on the panels and things like that. Knowing how it all slots together is hugely advantageous. So I'll put a link down in the video description to his scan of the instructions he got, because it doesn't show all the panels, but it shows a whole bunch of the panels. And it turns out that particularly if you were getting roof lining, you have to take out all kinds of things which you wouldn't think would be important, but because things kind of layer on top of each other, it kind of is. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this video up now. If you have enjoyed this video, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe. If you didn't like this video, that other button seems to work too. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.